Hello, everybody. We are now on session 17, which is shelter food storage. And it's got its own unique particular science that is not common in the food storage industry. We're used to storing food like this, and this is actually the most efficient way to store food, whether it's 5-gallon buckets or 1-gallon buckets or the 1-gallon number 10 cans. And I think this is still the most efficient. In all the shelters I design, I put the structure on the inside and put shelves across. There's a couple advantages. One, you have less steel exposed on the outside to corrosion. And on the inside, these are almost 12 inches deep. You can store all your food and a lot of other things in the wall here that doesn't take up floor space, which is so expensive in underground shelters. The amount of food and the type of food that you store should give you at least 2,000 calories a day, because you're not going to be very active inside a shelter. But you see here, this is some of the basics, and this is all in POP, so don't feel you have to memorize this. These are some of the basic requirements for people to have a normal life, a normal physical health. But where we get into trouble that I see is when people try and use dried food, which is, I think, the best way to do it for long-term food. But to get a complete protein is always a combination of two types of food. And this is in POP too, in the food section. You can mix bread and you can mix legumes like a bean, and you can get a complete protein. You can mix peanuts and you can mix seeds and you can get a complete protein. There's all kinds of combinations that you can store, but when you take them out of the 5-gallon buckets or 1-gallon buckets, whatever you have, you should be making a complete protein. Weevils is a problem, but there's a clear solution. The normal fumigant for food storage is nitrogen. But nitrogen is in air. 80% of air is nitrogen in the begin with. To begin with, so it isn't much better than regular air. On the opposite side of the spectrum, carbon dioxide is a heavy gas, and 1% of the atmosphere is carbon dioxide, so it's very foreign. And what we want to try and do here is not only kill the weevils, but kill the larvae of the weevils. That's the trick. The weevils dig a hole. You saw those ugly little creatures. They actually dig a hole in a kernel like a bean, and with their saliva they pack their larvae in. And that's what nitrogen doesn't get to. But if you use carbon dioxide, that will kill the larvae, the adults, and the larvae, even if they're embedded in the bean. When I use when I use nitrogen, about 1 out of 10 cans, when you open it up 10 years later, there's about 2 inches of yellow-brown paste at the bottom, and that's a sign that the weevils got to it. There were weevils in the food. The nitrogen did not work. The ones that we packed with carbon dioxide that were over 20 years old, none of the ones that we tested had any weevils in it at all. The food was still good. And just remember that carbon dioxide is heavy. It isn't like nitrogen, which is neutral. Carbon dioxide is heavy, so you can put it in the top of the can and it'll fall to the bottom. All these tests were confirmed by Dr. Harry Williams at the University of Tennessee, and he used a number of different insects. But this is a great way to do it. It's hard to get anybody, or next to impossible to get anybody, to pack dried foods, beans, rice, whatever, with carbon dioxide. They're just not used to doing it. It's much more expensive. It's heavy. It's just not what anybody in the food industry wants to do. But it is readily available. To actually carbon dioxide pack, you would get a cylinder of carbon dioxide from a welding shop. Um, and by the way, you don't ever want to use dry ice because dry ice has too much moisture and the food will rot. Okay, so you never want to do that. But carbon dioxide gas, um, this is the pressure in the tank. It's a little hard to see here, but this is cubic feet per hour. So you can turn this up, and this goes up to 50 cubic feet an hour. You match that to the volume of a 5 gallon bucket. So that means you're going to stick the hose inside. This is going to be sealed off with this cover. You're going to stick the hose in here because the gas is heavy. It's going to go down, and as it goes down, it forces the air out. So you don't want a tight seal here when you're putting your CO2 hose in. You want the CO2 hose to go to the bottom of the bucket, let that heavy gas work from the bottom up, and you time it according to the cubic feet an hour that's coming out of the regulator. But that is the best way to do it. We've had it out there now for almost 30 years with no wheels. So the test that the University of Tennessee performed was entirely accurate. And again, I like to store food in the shelves. This is a section of an S16. It takes 4 or 5 sections that are bolted together to make a big shelter. But these are number 10 cans up here. Here's 5 gallon buckets here. You can store all these in the wall. It's a much better way to do it than to actually take up floor space and stack the food up. Um, so those are the basics of storing long-term food. If you use canned food's only good for not more than a year. And the problem with canned food is and you have to do something with it at the end of the year, so you end up living your life in peacetime on canned food. So that's the problem that people face using conventional canned food that you'd buy at the local grocery stores. And dried food is so much cheaper. You can feed a family of 6 for a year on about $1,500 of dried food.